How's it going, guys? So today I'm going to be showing you how to tear apart the upper dash panel on your 2000 to 2005 Chevy Impala, which is an 8th generation Impala. Now you may be asking, why? Why do I care? What do I want to know? Well, there's many things that you can fix with taking off this upper dash panel. For example, one of which is the radio. If you ever have to replace it, or if you want to go with an aftermarket unit, you will have to take off this upper dash panel. Also, for example, the climate controls. If you ever have any problems with that, you will need to take off this trim panel. More importantly is the ignition switch. This particular model, the 8th generation Impala, as well as the Malibus around the same generation, have a security sensor built into the ignition switch, which is very common to go. Only remedy is to replace it. Guess what? You have to pull off this upper dash panel to replace this switch. So more importantly, today, the main reason of this video is we're going to be pulling out this instrument panel. Well, why? Well, I'm glad you asked. Well, basically, these cars, along with Tahoes, Suburbans, Sierras, Silverados, it's very common around these years for the stepper motors to go bad. And if you have any problems with your gauges, if it's acting erratically, if it gets stuck, or even if it doesn't work at all, more than likely, if it's in those year ranges, it's going to be a stepper motor. So the only remedy is to pull this instrument panel out and to replace the stepper motors. So stay tuned. I'll show you how to tear apart the dash in your 2000 to 2005 Impala. So as you can see, this Impala has 154,363 miles. It's quite a bit of miles. Now, all of the gauges work except for one. It probably shouldn't be that hard to guess which one doesn't work. So today we're going to be fixing the temp gauge by replacing the stepper motor. So the first step, you're going to want to take off the trim panels on the sides. Pops off like such. And you can see the 7mm screw, or the Phillips. So go ahead, we'll start by undoing this bolt here. And now we're going to repeat the same process on the passenger side of the vehicle. Now these panels do remove fairly easily. You can use a screwdriver or a trim removal tool. Most of the time you can just get it apart with your hands. Once the side panels are removed, go ahead and go to the driver's kick panel and push in the 2 tabs. So just push the tab down and lower the panel. Once the panel is removed, you can go ahead and access the 7mm Phillips screw bolt. So next on the list of screws to remove are the two screws above the instrument panel cluster. These again are a 7mm or a Phillips screw. Next up, you'll want to remove the trim panel piece located directly around the ignition switch. This can be removed very easily by working a flat blade screwdriver around the piece until it pops off. So next on the list to get the remaining portion of the lower kick panel off is go ahead, open the driver door, and here you can see there's a trim clip right here, and the only method to really get them out is to yank on the panel. Now there's multiple of these clips throughout the panel, so just work your way across it and the panel will release. Now if you have a trim removal tool, it will be a little bit easier, or even like I'm using here in a sec, a flat blade screwdriver. So just use light pressure, pull on it, and you'll release the clips. Once the panel drops down, you'll be able to see the trunk release button here. You can remove it, but I chose not to. It's not necessary. So just go ahead and remove the last remaining 7mm bolt. Now that all 7mm bolts are removed, you can go ahead and release the remaining clips, the trim clips holding the panel in place. So what you'll want to do is just apply some pressure on the corners, and once you create some gaps like you see here on the left, just stick your fingers in and work your way around. Now it will be a little easier with a trim removal tool or even a screwdriver, but just make sure you don't mar the surfaces. It's very easy to scratch this stuff. So just go ahead, use your hands if you want, and work your way around, slowly releasing the clips, and before you know it, the whole panel is going to be released. It's important to note when you're trying to remove this panel here, don't be too shy. I mean, it's going to take some force to release the clip, so don't worry about breaking anything. It's all built pretty well, and also you don't need to lower the glove box, so you can, but it's really not going to make a difference. You can work around it. After you released all the clips for the upper dash panel, it's now hanging. The only thing remaining is to undo the two switches up top near the steering wheel, one of which on the right side is the hazard switch, so release the pigtail for that. And then on the left side of the steering wheel is the traction on and off switch, and you'll also want to release that pigtail, and I'll show you a close-up of that in a second here. After the pigtails are released for the switches, go ahead and maneuver the upper dash panel piece away from the steering wheel and set it to the side where it's not going to get in your way. Alright, so here's what it looks like once you tear apart that top dash panel. Like I mentioned before, if you have to get to the radio, this is why you need to take off this dash panel. You have a screw here, another 7mm or Phillips, and then two over here. This pulls out, you have a couple connections. Same with the climate control, the HVAC stuff. You have one 7mm there and another 7mm or Phillips here. Pull that out, you can service that. The ignition, Got the 2 bolts here. And then you can pull out the ignition switch, and then also it makes it easier because there's the large connector on the back. The ignition switch, kind of hard to see right here, which is really only accessible once you free up the real estate right here. But the more important thing today is this dash panel. So as you can see, here is for the hazard switch we had to take out. To take that out, you just push down on the tab. Couldn't really get a good camera angle of that. So that's for the hazard switch. You have to unplug that to get this trim panel out. And then also this little guy right here. See if this focuses a little bit here. Yeah, so there's a small tab up here on the connecting piece. You just lift this up and push this out. So this is for the traction on and off switch. So that also has to be disconnected to pull this top panel out. So the only thing remaining to get this instrument cluster out is another 4 7mm bolts. So you have one up top here. Go to the left side, tucked away up top. You can kind of see it kind of not. You have one pretty low. I don't know if I can get a good angle. Let's see here. Back up. So right in here, almost directly underneath the E for empty. And then, of course, the final one right there. So another point to mention is I recommend wearing gloves. There is a lot of sharp metal here. And as you're prying stuff apart, it's real easy to cut yourself. Ask me how I know. And for this bottom one, you may have to adjust the tilt column a little bit to get to it. And this is the only connection you have to disconnect. So just, it's hard to get a camera angle of it, but it sits in place like this. So make sure you just push down on this tab and it releases. So there you have it. Now we have tore apart this beautiful 05 Impala to change this goddamn motor, and we'll put it back together.